How much is in your bank account?
Next
How
question,
much?
please.
How much?
Next question, please.
You're doing big deals. You're making millions of dollars doing big deals. Tell
Okay,
me,
now.
you're bringing Brick Ross to Nigeria. You're partnering with Universal, all these big labels. You're signing Davido in a licensing deal. All these people. Talk to me about that. Welcome to Business in Nigeria, the podcast that equips you with the knowledge and tools you need to start and grow your business in Nigeria. I'm your host, Ken Mo. If you are an entrepreneur, aspiring entrepreneur, or simply curious about the Nigerian business landscape, this podcast is for you. Our aim is to provide you with the inside scoop on the ins and outs, the key details, the nitty gritty of doing business in Nigeria. Join us as we explore the challenges, opportunities, and best practices for navigating the Nigerian business landscape. Let's get into it. Today we have Koch Okoye, the managing partner and founder of Immensum Music. He also started out managing Burna Boy in his early career. Today he works with the biggest artists in music, Afrobeats, and also in the US. He's based in Los Angeles, California, but he's always in Nigeria doing a lot of work with Afrobeats artists in Hollywood and in Nigeria or around the world. He's a good friend and he really has a depth of knowledge in music. Let's get into this interview. Koch, nice to have you.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Yes, Koch is an old friend. We lived in LA at the same time. You know,
Yeah.
he's been doing it in the music industry. I've watched him grow to become a multi-millionaire in dollars.
Oh God.
And I want you to share your story. I want people to learn from you. You have so much experience. So let's get into the nitty gritty of it, right?
All
Tell
right,
us,
let's do
tell
it.
us who you are. Tell us, tell us how you started with Burna
hmm
Boy, with all these big artists now. You work with all of them. Tell us.
Um, well, first of all, thank you for having me. Full name, Onoche Okoye. Koch is short. Um, Onoche is shortened into Koch, and it's a name that's stuck with me since I was like, I don't know, 11 or 10 years old. So everybody calls me Koch, and for ease of pronunciation, because in I guess my many travels, it gets pronounced and just bamboozled in so many ways. So Koch is easy for everyone. But yeah, Koch Okoye is easy, and that's me.
And tell me about your growth story. How did you start? How did you, when did you know you wanted to be an
Um,
entrepreneur? Tell me all of this stuff.
okay, so I guess taking it one by one, I started in the entertainment business around, I want to say 2008. I was still living in Bristol, or I went to uni in Bristol, university, I should say. And as much as I was doing my thing there for, accounting and economics, which is what I, finished with, I knew very early on that I didn't want to be in that world. I worked in it, I did the whole Canary Wharf run in London and, you know, all that stuff, but it just wasn't where my head was at, even though I could do the job and I was good at numbers and all of that from a young age. Thankfully, just going to your second question, as an entrepreneur, or the want to be an entrepreneur, I was raised by entrepreneurs. My mother, serial entrepreneur, started so many businesses. I watched her do so many of them, growing up. My dad, the same thing, entrepreneur from the jump. My stepfather. So everyone around me, had that, and naturally, that would obviously pass on to me wanting to own businesses or start businesses, I should
I
say.
understand that because
And
I say
yeah,
you're a product of your environment and you don't know anything
absolutely
else. You didn't see parents going to, work for somebody else and start a 9 to 5
right.
job. So like in your mindset, it was never a thing to like, let me apply for a job, right?
Right. No, simply. And it's not even a case of not wanting a boss, because at some point in my journey, I did work for companies, but it was more from a learning or experiential situation, wanting to see things firsthand. But yeah, I was definitely always on the path to becoming an entrepreneur.
I love that. I love what you said there because, one of the books I love, one of my favorite books is Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he says the
Mine
rich
too.
he says the rich don't work for money, but they do work for experience,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah, yeah.
so it's great to see it, come into fruition with you. Okay, go on. Tell me how did you then decide, it was music that you wanted to go
Right.
into? Were you creative, growing up? Like what other apart from music, cuz like you're the person when I think about music, I think about you. Like the best music, the most rare sounds. You like the way you look at music is like an art, right? So
Yeah,
tell me, is it
absolutely.
was it always has it always been music? Was that always your first love?
Music, definitely yes. I think just art and entertainment as a whole. Growing up, besides being an engineer, my dad was also a guitar player, and he also, in fact, so my dad owns a construction company. So growing up, we would always go to the site with him, and I've seen like so many buildings and bridges and roads being built. And so the architectural side of that would always happen, on my dad's computer, Windows 95, or and we were part of that. Like he would literally call my brothers and I and be like, okay, you guys come start drawing, start playing around with this. So I knew a lot about architecture and just art. And then at the same time, my dad would play guitar, or he plays guitar. So sometimes we just sit around and just he'd play and we sing and we just do things. And then going to my mom, I mean, I remember like one of my first albums that she bought for me, Naughty by Nature, and then things like Janet Jackson's Janet album, Shadi Adu, So these are albums that I'd had because I think one of the things my mom didn't want, this was as a kid growing up, I mean, growing up between like the US, the UK, Port Harcourt, this is when we were in Port Harcourt, my mom didn't want us sort of mingling in the streets, I guess, with the other kids. So she did everything in her power to keep us inside the house. So that was every video game. We literally had everything: Sega, Nintendo, anything you could think of that was out. We had it. We were the first to have it. So it kind of worked the other way around because all the kids in the neighborhood would want to come play, every version of Mortal Kombat or whatever that would come out because they knew we'd have it. And then for me, and this was, for us as a whole, but but more so for my brothers. But then for me in particular, I was always just like, just get me this album because just get me this album, get me that album. So I was the kid with all the albums. Back in the day when it was CDs and tapes,
Yo.
you would have the big album things where you'd slide in all the CDs.
Yeah.
I had like a ton of those just with
Wow.
a ton of albums.
Wow, so you
So
were the cool
I was
kid.
that
You were
kid.
the cool kid growing up cuz like each album was like a collectible. It was like, I'm
Yeah,
cool because I'm the one with Aaliyah's album. I'm the one with.
right, right.
So how
I
many how many
mean,
how many like of those like album disc what did we call them then?
right.
The albums? What do we call them? CD
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
holders?
yeah. CD, you're right.
I don't
Yeah,
know. What
album
how
holders,
many
CD
how many how
holders.
many
Yeah.
did you have?
I mean, I had the big ones that could take like 100 CDs at a time, and I
Damn.
probably had like four of those at a time. So I was just my goal was just to fill them up, right?
Mm.
And obviously listen and enjoy the albums, but then at some point it became more of a collector's item fantasy of just getting this album, getting that album, enjoying the album, and then putting it in my case so that I could refer to it for anything. So without even knowing it, I was already doing some sort of education in music, right? Because I would hear names like the Jimmy Iovine's and Clarence Avants and all these types of people just off of reading the album because I was that person who would also read every credit
Wow.
because the albums came with the songbooks if you
Yeah,
remember,
for sure.
so and the little the booklets and stuff with pictures, which artists don't really do these days, which is sad. But back then there was a lot more to buying an album for $10 or whatever. You were taking a whole lot more home with you. So I was the guy, or the kid I should say, who was looking at all of this and studying it, and then I would then go on and buy these lyric books. so that, where some of the albums didn't come with lyrics, like some of them did, but where they didn't come with lyrics, I'd buy the lyric books as well, and then I'd be going through the lyrics to make sure. And to be fair, some of these lyric books, especially the ones in Nigeria, they actually made a lot of mistakes. Um, but I was the one who was like looking and correcting it and looking for how to reach out to the owner of the company and be like, "You made a mistake, dude." But
Oh wow.
yeah, I was that like engrossed in it. So from a young age, and then going into like high school, one of the schools I went to was Igbinedion, another one was Corona. I was that guy who everybody just knew, Koch is coming, there's new music coming. So that's always been
Okay.
me. I've been the music reference guy as for as long as I've known, basically.
So okay, you're in college or university, and you already have this background,
Hmm.
of music, and music is changing in that time period.
Right,
We're all digital at this point. Probably we haven't, obviously streaming comes way later, but
right,
we're all digital. We're no longer buying albums. Unless you buy it
right,
from iTunes.
right.
But a lot of people are downloading on LimeWire, or
LimeWire and
just
yep, all
downloading all
that.
over,
Yep, yep, yep.
and all of that stuff. So what is your take on the whole music landscape at this point?
Whew, that's a broad question. I'll say it's definitely it's funny. I was reading the IFP Global Charts. It's a yearly magazine that comes out with just music stats from for the globe, and this year, or at least for last year I should say, but it's come out this year in 2023. You know, Africa has sort of finally come onto the map in terms of the growth has is something like 31% from last year, which is
Wow.
very high, exactly. And a lot of it is due to streaming. I mean, if you have a chance to look at the chart, you can see like they'll show you where streaming has come from, and it's literally done, that, going from nothing to the dominant thing, and physical like CDs and vinyl and tapes and all those have done that, right? So I've been there the whole time, participating in all of it. And it's been interesting to watch. It's been interesting to see,
The evolution.
yeah, the evolution, because I think at some point, even for like specifically for like Nigerian or West African music, we really didn't come onto the map until digitization happened. I still remember very clearly, shopping around for a deal for Burna Boy's album, his first album, and we had to go to Alaba, market in Lagos. Literally, I went there physically myself to go talk to the dealers, and that's how, if you think of the legends, the Banjes and the P Squares and the Two Faces from Nigeria, those are the quote unquote distributors or labels back then for us. So we didn't care about necessarily the outside world. We were just focused on getting the best deal with these guys in Alaba. And the Alaba market,
Wow.
for those who don't know, it was basically, or it's a market which everything is sold there, from wholesale goods to CDs and film. So even Nollywood was sort of tied to Alaba as well, as far as
Yeah.
distribution, right?
But it's
So
interesting that that was how they were able to, distribute. Even some of it is pirated.
oh, I mean, I
You know,
have stories for that. Trust me, a ton of it is
right.
pirated, right? But
But
I
that's
I
how
say all
you
that to
got it
say,
out there. That's how you got the
yeah,
brand
yeah,
out there to the
that was
world.
it. That was it. It was. I mean, like I said, no one really cared about the world per se because nothing was digitized. So we just cared about getting it out to the country and then to
Right.
the rest of the region, right? To Ghana, to Senegal, to Benin Republic, and such and such. And these guys had, or they built such a vast network that you do a deal with them, your album comes out under there, and they get their credit at the back of your album somewhere, and then it's everywhere. The next
Are
day
they?
your album
Are
could be
they?
in, yeah. No,
No, sorry.
sorry, go
The
on.
next day was. No, I
I was
want you
just
to
gonna
finish
say
that.
the
The next
next
day, the album
day,
could be.
your album could come out today in Lagos, and the next day it's in Paris via Cote d'Ivoire, but because someone has carried it there and they've bought it, through some guy on the street, and they'll take it and go around the world, and because everything was CDs, that's how we had to move stuff, you
So
know.
I guess my question is those Alaba market merchants, did they
Hmm.
end up turning that into a record label?
Unfortunately, not. It's funny you asked that
What?
question. I was talking about it with someone like recently, where if they had known what they had at the time, they would have definitely seen the future, as opposed to, I unfortunately will say it's a bit of greed, where they were too, engrossed in the moment with what the money they were making,
Mm.
because quite fairly they were extorting artists. You would, I mean, like I said, speaking from experience, we, gave them license to distribute, I don't know, something like 100,000 albums, right? For artists like Burna, and then 2 weeks later, you'd see like clearly 500,000 albums have been sold. So there's other copies that you haven't authorized, right? And things like that. So there was and that's
How
obviously
much?
gone. Sorry.
What was the percentage in if the 100,000 copy deal that you would set you would
hmm
how what was the percentage that they would still take from you?
It wasn't. I mean, each deal was different. Everyone, based on relationship, but most commonly, you would basically give them, they'd buy the right to distribute your album. So they maybe give you, for just the sake of numbers, they give you, I don't know, 10 million naira or something, right? And then they can distribute your album for a year, right? And then, they go do their thing and distribute it through their network and get it sold. And then when they exhausted, the idea was when they exhausted their amount, or when the time had expired, they come to renew. But what would happen would be them taking your album and then obviously going to do some piracy deals on the side, and then they would just go and make 1 million copies or 5 million copies and sell it. But they're still telling you, because I remember calling them a couple times, like, yo, I'm seeing so many albums everywhere. I'm going to Abuja, I'm going to Port Harcourt, I'm going to Calabar. The albums are everywhere. You can't tell me this is all just off of 100,000 album or CD deal, right? So you clearly are either doing more, or people are pirating what you're doing, or somebody's doing something wrong here. Do you know what I mean? So unfortunately, that was what the business was. So most artists knew that once you got your deal, that was pretty much all you were gonna get, and then the next thing would
Yeah,
be
that's the
to,
last payment. That's the
yeah,
last payment
that's
you
that's
got.
that would be the last payment as far as like master side distribution, for
So
the
they
release of
paid
your
you guys
album.
upfront $10
Yeah,
million dollars.
yeah, not
Nice.
dollars.
Well,
Yeah.
to be honest. Oh, sorry, Naira. Sorry, but to be fair, and Naira back then that was more than what it is today,
Yeah,
right?
not to say
So
we
I mean,
got
it was
10
like
million. I'm not saying we got 10 million. I was just using that as an example. But they would pay you whatever you
right.
negotiated with them, and then
Uh huh.
that's all you'd get basically. You know.
Well, that's the funny thing is that as much as that seems corrupt, or it is corrupt,
Yeah.
but that happens in Hollywood. It happens everywhere.
Oh yeah, but at
With
least
like traditional, like at least with film, like they say,
yeah,
even with a distributor, when you get paid up front, that's the last money you're ever going to see from your distributor.
yeah. I mean, it
Um,
happens, but there's at least a bit more. I think I want to say conscience, and
right.
also
Well, the
uh
law, there's accountability
and
because of
there's
the law.
accountability because of the law. You can sue people and such if you're
Right.
not happy. Whereas in Nigeria, like it's
But
like the
here's
Wild
the
West.
thing. I will say it was a blessing in disguise
Hmm.
because little did you know back then that nobody was going to be buying albums anymore.
That's what I mean.
And what you really need is promotion.
Right.
That's exactly what they did for you guys.
Which is why, I mean, it worked out for everyone, obviously. And we knew, like I said, that this payment, which is why we would all, as artists or as managers or as labels, negotiate so hard to get that upfront payment, because we all knew that this is all we were going to get. And then off the strength of your big singles, you'd get the shows, because that's like, so music, I always say to people, I was saying this literally like 2 days ago, the label side, even till this day, streaming, it's the loss leader for everything else, because off of a big single, you will then go on and get, a big publishing deal. You get, festival bookings. You get, your media marketing, whatever, not Trevor Noah anymore, but those types of shows and things off of the strength of your big singles coming out. So even if you don't get as much, and I mean, to a degree, some labels still do it today, where they will give someone a low, advance for their album. But then if the album blows up, the artist benefits from everything else, because the label, doesn't touch those other sides of it, at least if it's not a 360 deal, but most times the label won't touch the other sides of it. The artist and their team will be left to negotiate and do the business on the other sides. But the loss leader is the music for it to come out the right way and be promoted properly, you know?
Okay. So I let's go back,
Hmm.
to your career. So how did you meet Burna Boy, and talk about, working with him, being his manager, all of that.
So I think fortunately it has to start from where we all grew up. I was born in Port Harcourt. Same goes for Burna and many, artists talented today blowing up and many individuals. You
So
know,
was
uh,
Burna one of the kids in your house playing the video games?
no, he wasn't. But Burna was. So we went to the same high school. And he was actually, and we they called it like school son, school father relationship. So I was in a higher class than him. And I used to look after him. And obviously, our mothers knew each other, so there's that familiarity of look after your little brother when you're there, or look after your little cousin when you're there, because it's like hundreds of other kids, and there's bullies and things like that. So I was like, I guess a protector, to for lack of a better word. So I'd known him from then, from when he was like 10 or 11, and then life goes on. We go to UK for school, or we go wherever, and then our paths just, crossed again and again and again because of the closeness of, I guess, the Potako relationship, right? And then fast forwarding, after I moved back to Nigeria from the UK in 2011, I worked in radio at Beat FM, started there as a sound engineer, and then I moved on to an OAP, an on-air personality.
And
And
this is when you sort of quit your job, your typical,
like
boring
banking,
job.
and yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that
you quit
was,
that, you moved to Nigeria, you said
yeah,
I'm going to work on a radio station.
yeah. I wanted to work in music because I saw what was happening in like 2010. People like, the artist Lynx, for example, who's a friend, growing up. I saw him doing well, and I was like, we all used to sit in his room rapping, and now he's on TV. So I was like, he can do it, I can do it. So, and and actually my intention, to be honest, was moving back as a producer and an artist myself. But very quickly, I mean, I'm a shy person, so very quickly I was like, I don't know if I want to be an artist anymore. So I'd rather give my resources to other artists or empower them. And then in that journey of moving back, sometime in 2011, my good friend Kaide Anibaba, who's one of the owners of Aristocrat as well, alongside PD, Annie, myself, he'd hit me up, and he was like, "Oh, there's this kid, we just signed, and he's dope, and we need, to really push him, and we need your advice, and we need radio help and all of that, right? Because radio is still a big thing in Nigeria." Um, and so I was like, I'm down. Who's the artist? Let me hear the music. Da 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 da. And he pulls up to the radio station one day, and who comes out the car? Burna Boy. And he looks at me. I look at him like, you? Like, oh, come on, bro. Like, like. And so that was literally it. And then things just took on from there. I had a studio built in Lagos, and then we decided to move my studio into because there was an aristocrat house, and so we decided to move my studio into or my equipment, I should say, into the aristocrat house to build out that studio, and then obviously like Lyric, the producer, Pukado, Ozone, all the other artists from Port Harcourt, we moved them all into the house. It was like a big 10-bedroom house, and they all
So
stayed there.
at
Yeah.
this rate, you're giving your resources. Like, are you like one of the owners of the company? Are you on the
Yeah.
board? What is your equity percentage? How did you like sort of, because they brought you on, so how did you negotiate sort of
Yeah.
your ownership?
Yeah, that was part of it. I mean, so I'm a partner in the company, albeit, I mean, you could say a silent partner, but I'm a partner in the company. But at the time, obviously, we were building the label up, so I was more active at the time, back in like 2011, 2012, 2013, and all that. And as an investor or as a partner, you bring your contributions and things. So I brought resources, like I said, things like studio, help build that, and then we negotiated, our splits and all of that. And
So
you know,
what was your cut?
I can't say.
Coach,
But it
how much is
was
in your accounts?
I can't say, but it was decent. It was good.
It was decent. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
was is Burner a part owner as well in the label?
No, no, no. I'll say he wasn't a part owner of the label. And he was just the flagship artist. And we did our thing. Obviously.
So what experience did you guys have in building a record label? At
Um,
least the whole team, and how did you guys know what to do?
I think it was just a meeting of minds and passion, enthusiasm from everyone wanting to see it work, right?
Yeah.
I came in, we all like Kaide himself, he was an artist, 100 years ago. PD was a producer. So everyone had that, music industry
Experience.
love and experience, right? And we, I guess, all felt maybe we were too old to be not too old, but we just, I guess, maybe weren't in that headspace of being artists anymore, but we wanted to empower the next generation. So
So how old were you at that time,
at
and how old was
25,
the Kaya? So you were
yeah, we're
25. How old was Kaya Day at the time?
maybe 24. I think we were all like between 24 and 26 or something, or 23 and
So how
26 at
did
the
you
time.
come together in a healthy collaborative spirit to build a label? Because you see a lot of in Nigeria, there are a lot of entrepreneurs who are all about having 100% ownership. So
Right,
like, and it's very common there, right?
right,
And I guess because of there's a lack of accountability because of the laws and people exploit and you can't sue and all that stuff.
right.
So what made you guys say, look, we're gonna come together collectively, bring our resources because you could go further with more
Yeah,
people.
yeah,
What made you
absolutely.
What made you guys say that?
I think it starts off everything, even till this day, I say to people, everything starts with a relationship. You could have 100 offers on the table, but um, unless, in my opinion, you're going with people who you actually know and trust and can, go for a cup of coffee with or go out to a bar with, you're not going to really enjoy yourself. So it's really about the relationship. Kaide, particularly, and myself, we've known each other since we were teenagers, just going through the streets of Lagos at parties, 11:45 and all that. We used to do all that together as like, whatever, teenagers, right? So we've known each other forever. PD is from Port Harcourt as well, and we'd known each other from Port Harcourt as well. So we all knew each other. Do you know what I mean? So it started there. We were friends, and then it made everything else easier. So there was no, and till this day, there's never been any, butting heads over splits or monies or this or that because we're friends. We can talk as friends. You
So
know what I
do
mean?
you still own that label?
I'm still a
Like, do
partner.
you still?
I'm
Okay, you're
still a
still a partner.
partner, yeah, but like I said, I'm not as active, so I'm more of a silent partner today. And
So
then,
what are your new? Is Burna Boy still signed to that label, and who else is
no, no, no,
signed
no, no,
on?
no, no. These days, so Aristocrat today has a partnership with Universal Music. And I believe the flagship artist now is a lady called Ria Sean, very talented artist. And she's doing her thing. She's really talented. I'm really excited for her. Burner's not signed to Aristocrat. No, his deal expired a while ago, and he moved on to create his company Spaceship, which obviously has gone on to do deals with Bad Habit and Warner Atlantic and all and such and such. So yeah,
So
but
when did Burna's contract expire?
I mean, I can't remember the exact dates, but I want to say sometime in maybe 2015 or something, 14 or 15.
So you
That,
guys
yeah.
didn't even chop this African giant money.
Oh no, so the funny thing is just like Lyric, PD, we all contribute because we're all still friends. Like, PD was part of the production because PD also helped the career of a young producer called Kel-P, who's an amazing artist and producer today. And PD brought Kel-P in, and if you remember, Kel-P was very heavy on production with, African Giant and I think even Twice as Tall. Kelpie had like a record or two in there. So everybody, as much as and going back to my talk about being friends, as much as we don't have contractual agreements, in terms of you're earning this and you're earning that, we're still friends, so we can still work together. We still do a lot of things together. PD will call me up, hey, Ria Sean, this, that. can we put her on this or that? Like we had a festival in December 2022 in Nigeria, and Rhea Sean performed. She's not, signed to me. I don't look after her on the daily or anything. I don't earn any royalties from her, but that's my friend. I believe in the artist. The artist is amazing, and why not have her on my festival? You know what I mean? Or my company's festival, I should
I
say.
get you. I get
Yeah.
you. So talk to me about building this label.
Right.
Initially, with Burna Boy, what were the early days of Burna Boy's career like? How did you help him facilitate that and build him up to
Um,
what he has become today?
I mean, just like any other artist, you want to see passion from them. It's scary when a manager or an executive on a label is more passionate or more driven than the artist, right? It's like
Mm,
that's a big red flag. So with Burner, for example, there's never that. It was the opposite, where he was always on us to be like, hey, I want to do this, I need to do that, and such and such. So that almost makes our job easier because we have to just do our bit, and we know that he's going to deliver. So he's always been that driven, guy. He's always been that driven person who wants to be the top of the world, and look at today, he is on the top of the world. So it's beautiful to see, and we all get to share it. I still hang out with them, every time I get an opportunity, and I'll go to the shows and I'll be backstage and we all celebrate, right? So that was him from the jump. Like he always wanted to be that guy. He always wanted to be the person putting the voice of the nation or the continent on his back and carrying it to the world type thing. So he never changed. Still the same guy. Still the same person.
fantastic.
Yeah.
And also, sort of, you guys managing this relationship of like collaborative spirit in business.
Hmm.
Talk to me about what it really takes. What do you think it takes to, put greed aside or put selfish interests aside and just come together, to build something that's bigger than you?
Right. I mean, it still goes back to the same thing. What's your intention? What's your vision, right? And as long as we all align, then there's a seed that can be planted, and the beauty, the tours and the awards and everything will be the fruit of that intention, So that's essentially what it's been for all of us. As I said, we're friends first, right? And as long as that stays, it breeds trust, which breeds business and partnerships and such, and then we take it from there. But that's really what it's been from building the label. And then for me, just decide. I mean, at some point, I think I want to say 2014, I started to, I don't know, look beyond Nigeria and started to think, what's next for this sound? What's next for these artists that I look after? What's next for the region, the continent? And then that was what
Yeah.
brought me back to America, because I grew up here till I was, I don't know, like 8 or something, or 9. Um, and then that's what brought me back. I was like, okay, I'm moving back to America because the North American market is the pinnacle market. It's where everyone goes to blow up, right? So whether you're from the UK or anywhere in Europe or South America or wherever, you want to blow up in North America. So I had that same
Yeah.
vision. And then I moved back to America, and I moved to LA. And
So
then
yeah, I remember.
yeah,
I remember. When you had moved back to LA,
right.
and so talk to me about that process because you went back to
Yeah,
school
yeah,
to
yeah,
study the music industry, right?
yep.
And so a lot of people in the music industry, especially in Nigeria, don't have that foundation, that educational foundation in music. Why did you think it was necessary for you to do that, and what did you gain from that?
I think it starts with, I think in any business, really, you want to come in and give yourself the best odds of success, right? So for me, I think just as a Nigerian, as an African, the one thing our parents hammer into our heads is education. You must go to school. You must do this, right? So it's there. So I looked at it as, okay, I've been in this industry. I've been in radio. I've done some TV stuff. I'm running a label, but there are things that I still don't understand, and it made me uncomfortable, if I'm being honest. So I wanted to be able to understand every single thing about this business that I was going into, because obviously envisioning, I don't know, a 30, 40, 50-year career in the industry, you don't want to come in, with your hands tied behind your back. So I wanted to learn everything. And, I looked up every school and everywhere I could find. And fortunately, I found Musicians Institute in LA. It was between that and UCLA, but Musicians Institute appealed more to me. It was right in the middle of Hollywood, and I guess I was in my, I don't know, touristy head of like, yeah, let me go be in Hollywood. And so I went, did a degree in that, in music business and entrepreneurship, like a postgrad degree. Um, and yeah, it was an amazing experience because I can't begin to quantify what I gained from that, not just from an academic standpoint, but even just the relationships built, because all the teachers, they're active live music industry people, executives. Like one of my teachers who ended up being my mentor, and he's late now, so Lord rest his soul, Don Grierson. He was the person who signed the Beatles. He signed Tina Turner. He
Oh
was
wow. Ooh.
he was the head of Motown in the 70s, so he was a VP, sorry, of Motown in the 70s. So having someone like that sit with you daily and just teaching you what they've gone through, talking to you about their game and everything, it's like it's priceless, right? So you can't buy that anywhere. So for me, those are the things I was really latching onto, those relationships, those things I was getting to experience. And then part of what happened from the school uh, course was I got to do an internship. So one of the companies that I'd been working, I guess, with or using, was called TuneCore, and TuneCore is one of the first distribution companies, alongside CD Baby and all those guys. And TuneCore, we used to use TuneCore to distribute like our music, right? So it was so interesting that I got the chance to intern there, off of my school degree, and then from an internship they liked me and then they hired me full time. So that was another, like I said, blessing from going to school and going through that process. And for everybody's different. Obviously, some people will just get straight into it and learn on the job. And if you have time, because sometimes you don't have enough time. If you're messing up in your job, you get fired, right? But some people, they go into the job without any experience and they learn, and they have the ability to learn very quickly, and then they learn and learn and improve and build. And maybe you read uh Rich Dad Poor Dad, or you read All I Need to Know About the Music Business, and you learn more and you keep going, But for me, it was literally that process of going to school, coming out top of my class, it felt like a playground to me,
That's
because
it.
because I was already in the business. I was already in it. So
Right.
I was that kid in class who was always asking questions. I was so um involved in everything, and everyone else around was just like, they'd be looking at me like, you're a geek. And I'm like, I'm not a geek. I just love this industry. I love what we're doing, and I want to know more about it. And so I was that
Yeah.
kid who would stay back after class to talk to the teachers, and they would always be happy to talk to me. And I'd literally be the only one in the class with the teacher, and we'd sit for like an hour and a half extra just talking, So it was things like that. And that's just because I had the genuine passion and love for what I was trying to do. And so it wasn't a surprise when I graduated and I was top of the class, because I was doing it every day. Practice makes perfect, right? So and that
Mm.
was that, really, yeah, in a nutshell.
There's something interesting that you said. You worked at TuneCore, which is like a huge company now with
Hmm.
Discro Kid and all these other
Right.
platforms that allow you to put your music
New
on
music
streaming
up.
platforms,
Yeah, we
right?
own one, by the way,
Uh,
called June to November, I just want to say. So but
Fantastic,
yeah.
wonderful, because you learn how to do it, right? But
Right.
it's interesting to me. How did you? Because I think there's a theme here, right? You caught on to emerging trends,
Yes.
whether it was Afrobeats in the first place, and the other one was working at TuneCore,
Hmm.
and I'm sure you've done it in so many other ways. What do you think? Was the light bulb moment for you realizing, wow, this is going to be big? Because I can say in 2014, as much as I enjoyed Afrobeats, I never thought it would go international and
Right.
global. I didn't
Right.
see that happening. So what was it for you that, like, what are the signs that you were able to tell that, this thing is gonna go, this thing
Hmm.
is gonna be big. And also, I'll say this: you saw that with Burna Boy too. You saw that with World too.
Right.
What is that? Tell me about it.
I mean, I want to say honestly, I would just put it down to instinct and even there's a saying about, I don't know exactly how it goes about like luck, but luck is where hard work meets is it passion or
Preparation.
something, or preparation? There we go. And so I'd always, because I've always had knowledge of the industry, as I mentioned, from being a kid with all the CDs and reading and knowing people's names and things like that, right? So I always prepared in that way, right? And so in that same vein of preparation, I would always go network with people and talk to people, and then just my own natural instinct and love for music. I was that guy. I think it's something that's kind of followed me all the way through in my life. I mean, I remember being that kid, who would wear. As a guy, I used to wear skinny jeans, and a lot of guys thought it was feminine, and I was like, I don't care. I'm wearing skinny jeans, or at some point, I used to put on, nail polish, right? And today, every guy around me has nail polish.
Everybody's
Yeah,
doing that now.
but I used to do that back in 2008 and 2010 and stuff like that. So I've just always kind of done what's felt good to me, without caring about the rest of the world. And if it feels good to me and it's legal, obviously, I'm good to go. So and my instinct just tells me to just do it. And it's the same for music, where there's songs and there are artists that I'll listen to and nobody else knows who they are or anything about them. And I'm just so interested in finding out more. So it's kind of just been that, instinct that's allowed me see things early. And
Right.
it's guided me all the way, and long may it
So
continue.
it's like um, curiosity, attention to detail,
Right.
being nerding out, and all of that. And I think that's the funny thing, is that I'm very similar, not in music,
Right.
or not as much in music, more in other
And
things.
right.
And so I think that's one of the things that sort of like, made me like, oh, he's very much like me, but in other ways, right? You go deeper in music than I go.
Right.
So I thought, oh, that's really dope.
Thank you.
So I guess moving on, right? It's you're working at TuneCore. What year did you start working at TuneCore, and were you building Immensum,
Yeah, it
as
was.
well?
Um
And how, tell me about that. What it was like, doing the two. When did you start working at TuneCore?
Tunco was I believe I was there for about maybe a year and a half or almost 2 years. It was between, I want to say, 2016 and 17, or 15 and 17, something like that. In that window. And one of the things, so Immensum started in April 2016, and while I was at TuneCore, I told them, in fact, before I joined them, I told them, hey, I have my own company, I'm doing my own thing. Um, and I hope that's not going to be a problem. And they're like, they're actually pretty, cooperative in the sense that instead of working 5 days a week, they allowed me to work 4 days a week. So I would have, a day to myself to run my company, and then I do everything else, TuneCore all through the week. So that was what it was, as far as TuneCore. And it was a great time. I met a lot of good people there, good relationships I still carry to this day. And what that was more on the publishing, administration and sync licensing side. So that was like my
So
first
so let me
experience
let
of
me
it.
because I want to dig into that a little bit.
Hmm.
So you have this 9 to 5 job. It's paying your bills, so you're able to take care of your wife, take care, have an apartment
Right.
in Hollywood, and you're good. Now you have this other company, right, or this company at Immensum, and you then decide it's publishing that you want to start with.
Right.
Why? Why everybody's starting record labels,
Right.
everybody's doing all sorts of things. Why publishing?
Well, once again, it's that same instinct. I think during my time as Burner's manager and all of that, I kept getting inquiries about like sync licensing, and I kept getting just different interesting inquiries. So, and I didn't feel comfortable because I didn't know enough about it. So I was like, and that's like I said, just the the choice to go back to school to learn, it's part of it, like where I just didn't know enough about all these things, and I was like, I want to know what this is. So obviously in school I learned everything there was about publishing. I read all the books, I met people, I would go to conferences and things. And so that was me going in there because, just as you said, everybody wanted record labels. But the music industry, I think people either don't realize or forget that there are up to 40 different income streams, right? Or revenue streams, I should say. And people just think of like, you know, put your music on Spotify and Apple, or DSPs and stream, do a show, maybe get a brand endorsement deal. But there's so many ways to make money in the music industry. So I just I don't know where that came from in my head, but I just instantly wanted to do everything apart from the norm, right? And I was so publishing appealed the most to me because the publishing industry is like another, I don't know, $6-7 billion industry in America alone. You know what I mean? So I was just like, yeah.
And it was untapped. It was
And it was,
untapped in
yeah,
Nigeria.
exactly. And it was,
So you're it's
yeah,
like a blue ocean,
yeah, literally. And I
situation,
was the only one
and
there.
you can
Yeah,
actually like, you were the only one there, and you could really take up all the big acts,
yeah,
right? In
yeah,
a way that no one else was approaching them,
yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. That
Because
was the,
a lot of people, I always say this a lot, right? Why go through the front door where there's a big line where you could go in through the window?
right.
Like David O, Burna Boy, they might answer you, but it's how you approach them.
Right.
If you approach them the way everyone else is approaching them, wait in line.
Right.
If you approach them in a different way, well, go through the window, and no one
Right.
else knows where the window is. Boom.
Yeah. No, that was literally it. Where for me it was just wanting to see the other side of things. And like I said, publishing was such a big, and is such a big market. And then the cool part of it, I guess, is the sync side, where you see your songs in movies and commercials and series and all of those things. So I was like, how does this happen? And so I learned how it happens, and that's through sync licensing or through just pub admin and such and such. And that was me. So being at TuneCore, that's what I was doing. I spent a lot of my time doing admin. And don't get me wrong, to each their own, right? Some people love to sit in front of a computer and type all day and put things in spreadsheets and columns, and some people don't. And some people want to sit and listen to music all day and find matches or similarities in songs that can be for a film pitch and such and such. So, but I did both, and I did it, for a while and very sternly, and I enjoyed doing it actually. So it was cool. And so when it came time when I felt like I'd learned a good amount of it, it came time to actually experience it firsthand. And then that's how we started, with Immensum. We started as a publishing entity, essentially, before we branched out into the other things. And so very early on,
Okay.
I
Go
was
on.
just going to say, we were having the conversations with a lot of artists in Nigeria who either just didn't even know there was money to be collected, for them. And I was like, yeah, you have like tens of thousands of dollars waiting to be collected, in these different PROs, right? And we can help you do that. And so obviously they were all up for it, So luckily for me, a lot of the early clients we signed didn't ask for like advances and stuff because they didn't even know what to
I was
ask
gonna ask you
for.
that question. I
Yeah,
was gonna ask you
and
that
yeah.
question. So let's get this. Let me just understand. So at this point, the low hanging fruit is publishing.
Mhm.
How quickly from launching your company, what did it take you to start generating income?
Um, I mean, so for me, because I knew what I was going into, I did all my research and everything before. All I had to do was launch the company, and everything was gonna, flow in because I'd already kind of set everything up prior. So as soon as the company launched, and we registered with all the PROs, globally, and built all our relationships with third party collectors and such in different regions. It was all about just turning the key, and the tap started flowing. So I want to
Well,
say within, I don't know, 2 to 3 collecting periods, which is quarterly, we were already like seeing a decent amount of money come in for the clients. Yeah.
when you say a decent amount of money, how much are you talking about?
I mean, thousands of dollars, obviously. But for us, I mean, collecting on their behalf in gross, right? But then for us in net, it was still, thousands of dollars because there was a lot of money to collect for the artists, right? So
So who was your first publishing signee?
I want to say, I want to say it was maybe Fouls or um, we did early admin for Burna before, and then we helped orchestrate him going over to Universal. But I want to say
In
it
terms
was
of his
Fouls.
publishing, or
Yeah,
you
in
said
terms of
you
his
okay,
publishing, yeah, for Burna's publishing. But I want to say it was Fouls. Fouls is the probably because
okay.
once again, it's down to relationships, right? I have a great relationship with Fowles, as well as his manager or one of his managers, Sydney, but his even his other manager, Femi. Like I know all once again, we're all friends, right? And being that I was on radio, Aristocrat, all of that, so people already knew me from Nigeria, so it was easy to have these conversations around music business, and I was not calling them talking about record deal this or that yada yada, which 100 other people were probably calling them for. I was talking about something they hadn't heard about. So they're like, "Oh, I want to
Mm.
hear this." You know what I mean? So, so that's what it was. So yeah, it was easy conversations to get into at the time, and I was the only one speaking that language. I dare say there's probably not more than I don't know 3 or 4 publishers in Nigeria even today in 2023. So it's not like a lot has
Because
changed, you know.
you have taken the whole market.
Oh, please stop. Like,
So what I'll say is that they say give it, I can't remember the time frame, but like three
10,000
months.
hours or something? Or
No. Like 3 months, and then your competitor is gonna. Oh no, it's a year and a half, and then your
right,
competitor is gonna be in the marketplace.
right.
Because like you're showing them that, oh shit, people are making money from this. But like
Mm.
luckily for you, publishing is such a silent way of making money that you like. How long did it take before you start seeing competitors come in
I
the
mean,
market, or do you think they haven't come yet because it's so silent?
I don't know about silent. Like I said, it's a whole, I mean, this is like billions of dollars in this industry. So I don't know. I don't think that's really silent. But as far as the
Well, I think the
region,
reason why I say it's the reason why I say it's silent is because in terms of it's a silent revenue stream that
right,
is hidden. You don't know that when you look at an artist, you're not thinking, oh, how much is he making from
in
publishing? No,
publishing,
you're thinking
yeah.
how much
No,
is his
I hear
record
you.
deal,
I
how
hear
much is
you.
his concert. It's
I hear you.
visible, but it's like back end silent. If you get me.
Yeah, I get you absolutely. And sorry, your question again was to
So
that
how long did it take before you
before
start seeing competitors
competitors.
in the market? Yeah, start coming in the marketplace.
Honestly, I mean, my competitors were really and have always been the major competitors in the sense that, locally, like in obviously, like for example, you go to South Africa, they have like because they have a functioning market, there's their PRO, which is Samro, and their actual publishers down there, right? But when you go to like West Africa or East Africa, a lot of people don't care, or not to say don't care, but they just don't know enough about it to get into the market. So even to this day, there are not a lot of competitors within Africa. But I was competing with, or I've been competing with, companies in, the Netherlands or the UK or the US to sign artists because,
So it's
especially in,
silent.
I
It's
mean,
silent. It's very silent that like in Africa people don't even they're not looking at that.
it's people. Some people are definitely looking, but I just think there's not enough knowledge, or people aren't seeking the knowledge enough because maybe, like you said, it is a more silent income stream as opposed to record deals that everyone screams and shouts for, right? Publishing it's definitely a more silent income stream, and people don't maybe care enough about it, unbeknownst to them that it's actually a pretty good one,
You
But
know,
yeah,
very good one and minimal effort I believe on the it's like passive income, right? Once
no,
you get it
absolutely,
done,
absolutely,
it's like it's
absolutely.
just it just flows,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And then you just
Right.
update it from time to time. Someone puts out a new album, you register the new songs, and it'll, it's yeah. So it's definitely passive income.
And so you have
Um,
like a system that like scans the internet to see who's like pirating or who's using songs that they shouldn't be using. How do you
we
scan and find out?
well, we have a system, but fortunately, the industry has its own, self-check systems. So, say for example, with I don't know PRS in the UK, if there are multiple registrations of a song, and this happens, more than one person may be trying to claim, I don't know, Davido's royalties, and who's obviously one of our publishing clients. PRS would just hold everything and ask for everyone to
Proof.
clarify and give proof of who the actual publisher is. And obviously we're going to win that every time because we'll show our documentation and sign contracts and such and such. And so they'll give everything to us and then they'll dismiss everyone else. So that
People are such
happens very
criminals.
regularly.
People are
Yeah, I
such
mean,
people are such criminals. Like
it's the world we're in.
like,
It's the world we're in.
people are such criminals. Jesus.
It's what it is, and that's why these systems are put in place to protect
Right.
the people who are
Right.
doing it the right way, right?
Like just a quick story. I remember a story about this guy sending a check to Google every, like, I don't know, he said it frequently. It's not a check, sorry, an invoice. And Google kept paying him out, and I think it was up to like $100 million that they had paid him out
Wow.
before they spotted it. And of course, like, you're going to jail.
Of course. Of course.
You're going to jail. Like, it's not even worth being, that kind of a criminal. Okay, so now you've built out this publishing. It's the tap is open. There's money coming in. How much is in your bank account?
Next
How
question,
much-
please.
How much?
Next question, please.
Okay, I said, what's next? So, like, you've built this system out for publishing. What's the next revenue stream that you want to focus on?
I mean, in the world we live in, I think, and just with my personality, honestly, I've learned to, and I get accused of this as well, of being too quiet, but I kind of have learned to just do my thing in my corner, and not give too much away, obviously because
Okay, I'm not even saying what are you going to do next. I'm saying
Right.
after you did that, what else did you do?
What else did I
next? What
do?
did you
I
Yeah,
see.
yeah, yeah. What
Okay,
did
I thought you were talking about.
No, I'm not trying to tell you to give me your keys now.
Oh no,
Don't worry
it's
about
all
it.
good.
Keep that a secret.
I will say what we did after was, I want to say we moved into talent management and agency work officially. So because obviously I'd had the experience of managing artists, from Burna and all the other Aristocrat artists, and Lyric, producer. So there were a lot of artists who were on my radar, who I just felt needed to be looked after better, right? And I think the first person I want to say was probably World, back in like it was probably in 2016 as well. And we started talking, and this is when Show You Off was done. I remember, and that was because I'd known World for a few years prior to that, and then after he came to LA to shoot Show You Off, and we've been talking, and then we kicked off probably and somewhere near the end, like Q4 of 2016. And it was an amazing journey because we're friends first, and then it makes the business easier to deal with, right? So we went on to obviously do a lot of things with his different projects, including the one with SARS, that everyone loves, and and still sings and dances to, or dance to, I should say, sorry, till this day. And that is also down to just relationships and network, because SARS is someone who I've also known for a while, and I consider a good friend. And normally for someone, I guess, of SARS's caliber, it's harder to deal with or work with up and coming artists. But when there's an intermediary such as myself, it was easy, because I was like, hey SARS, I want you to meet my friend, my client. And World obviously knew who SARS was and wanted to work with him, and then they met, and they clicked off. Like, they hit off immediately in the studio, and I want to say like 3 weeks later, the first Trouble project was made after I introduced them. And it was beautiful to just watch the whole process. I want to say that was something like 2017. And then
Okay,
it was beautiful.
So I kind of want to understand, like, the business now. So, you're doing publishing. I imagine you have a very small team at this time, at this point.
Yeah.
How big is your team for publishing?
Now or then?
No, then, like, when you started publishing.
When I started, it was just me. I was the one doing everything
Right.
myself, admin, sync, everything.
When you then when you then transitioned
Hmm.
to management, you're going to need a team for this, right?
Right.
And I imagine it's the revenue that you had been making from the publishing that could fund, this team. So tell
Right.
me what it was like structuring that team. How big was the team? What did it cost you to sort of like
Um,
implement that?
well, at so the funny thing about it, and that's why I started with the world, discussion, because world introduced me to uh one of my business partners now, Saheed, but my closest business partner. And I think Saheed and World had met in LA somewhere, and then we were all out. World and I were out, and then he spotted Saheed, and he was like, "Oh, that's the Nigerian guy I met. Come meet him. Come meet him." And then Saheed and I, we met, and we clicked, instantly, and then we started to talk about everything, and then Saheed, came on board as a partner, and we started to then structure things. So we started to build, the team, and different people. So I think by Sahid and I probably kicked off properly um with Immensum. I want to say like maybe 20 end of 2017 slash early 2018. And prior to that, I've been doing everything myself, both management and the pub stuff. But when Sahid came in, he definitely came in with new ideas, new visions, that we all aligned, or we both aligned on. And then he came with a network of people, and so we had some interns, we had some staff that we were paying and such, but we made it work. And we built out, I think we maybe at one point we had, like, I want to say, like, maybe 4 people, 4 or 5 people, and we've gotten to the point where we're up to like 40 people, around the world. But definitely, Sahid was like the first person, who came in with me, and then we turned it into what it is today,
So how did
basically.
you guys decide to structure that? Did you say, okay, we're going to go 50-50, 51-50, or how did you, how were you able to like incentivize him? Because a lot of people have this challenge, right?
Yeah.
Incentivize him to join in, and like what percentage or what equities were you sort of offering?
I think it's, once again, it starts with relationships, and we had the same vision. Sahid is, was born and raised in Houston, but he's Nigerian, of Nigerian descent, Nigerian family and everything. So we could relate on a lot, right? So in us sharing ideas for where the sound was going, where the continent was going, right? It was easy to just come together, and then, we obviously, figured out an equity situation, to transfer some ownership to him and such, and it was, yeah, it was an easy convo, and everything has worked brilliantly, since then, and long may continue.
Fantastic. Okay, so now today, tell me about today. What it's like. Okay, you said 2017. You brought Saeed in. At that point, Wizkid had already had one dance.
One
That's
dance, yep,
2016.
yep.
Like music is like Afrobeats is flowing into the American, you know, music sphere at this
Mm.
point. It's popping. You see the opportunity is fresh now, like something that has been developing for a decade, over a decade,
Hmm.
is now like ripe and is now pouring in. What opportunity do you see, and how do you take advantage of it now?
I mean, today it's I I was on the phone earlier with one of the managers of the DJ Uncle Waffles, and she's performing at Coachella this year. And we were just talking, just relating and talking about things, and we were talking about how Afrobeats is like the new hip hop in America, right?
Oh,
And
100%.
and
100%.
amapiano is like the new EDM or dance music,
Oh,
in like just globally. You go to Ibiza, or you go to,
ooh,
anywhere you want to go, you're hearing amapiano, right? And so, just to go back to your question, it's here. There's if it's one of those where, if you're not with it, then sorry, you missed the train, right? Or if you're not trying to get on this train to understand what this is, you're gonna be left behind. Same way people who didn't adapt to streaming, you know, unfortunately have been left behind. So
right.
that's what African music is today. I think
But here's
it's
the thing, though: is it
mhm,
here to stay?
absolutely,
Because
absolutely.
there were moments when reggae was here. There was moments when reggaeton was here.
Hmm.
but did it stay?
Well, that's a brilliant question, and this is something that we talk about very regularly, about how to have it stay and not just be a phase. Because um, if you look at the other sort of genres, take reggae for example, and dancehall, 2000 from the 90s into like the early 2000s. I want to say, let we can I guess say maybe Sean Paul, Beanie Man, those the early 2000s was
Bob
like the
Marley?
peak. No, I mean, if I obviously Bob
Okay, you're
Marley
talking
is
about
legendary, but I'm saying
right,
where
right,
it got to its peak, right? As
right,
far as
right.
like
Yeah,
North America, right? I think the mistake they made was they got comfortable with what they were receiving. They got comfortable with having, a Sean Paul and Beyonce record, or having a Beanie Man and this person record, but they weren't prepping the next generation. And so after those legends started to slow down, there was nobody, to pass the baton to keep it going. So yes, of course, there are people like Popcorn and, the likes, but it's still, so few and far between. And if you don't have the momentum as a region, people are going to fall off. If your records are not on the radio, if you're not on playlist covers and all that in today's world, people are not going to listen as much if there's just activations and things like that. So the
you
same
know,
can be said for. Oh, go on,
to
please.
your point, I think that's interesting that you said they didn't sort of pass the baton. And I see, like, when Rihanna first came out with Pon de Replay,
Hmm.
it looked like she was going to be the one, but her team sort of like transitioned her out of reggae
Right.
into pop,
Exactly.
right?
Into
But
exactly.
do you think that that was because back then there were gatekeepers in terms of music trends. There were gatekeepers that decided what was going to be trending or not. And today, the audience decides what's going to be trending.
I mean, to be honest with you, I think the audience has always decided what would trend. But yes,
Interesting.
gatekeepers, exist, and they still exist till this day.
But
But
they're
it's
not as
just
they don't
they're
have
not
as much
as
authority as they
yeah,
had
yeah,
then, right?
yeah. I agree. They're not as powerful as they once were. And then obviously people resort to, and I guess to your point of the audience in today's market, people resort to TikTok and Instagram and such to determine, the temperature of a song, right?
Right.
Whereas back in the day it was radio and music television and such, right? So, but yeah, I would say going to back to Rihanna, yeah, she was converted, or turned into a pop artist, but it doesn't mean there weren't other Rihannas who could have still played
Right.
within the space of the core sound which they came from, right?
Right.
So,
But
so it's
also,
still
it's
going
kind of
back to my
interesting
point.
because back then there weren't that many. It was just Sean Paul. It was just Beanie Man. It wasn't like
No,
there was a
that's not
whole
true.
wave of okay. Who else
There
is
was
who?
I
Okay,
mean, bro, there was Bounty Killer. There's, I mean,
who
I could
now?
there's
Uh
it,
huh. No, no, no. I'm sure. I'm sure if I hear their music, I'll know who you're talking about.
look, there's a whole host of
Fair
artists
enough.
that came
Fair enough.
from Jamaica and
Fair
just from
enough.
the Caribbean, right? And Elephant Man. The list is long,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So,
Sure. Fair
but
enough.
like I said, when those guys, and kudos to them because they really shook the world. Like if we think of like 2002, right? Literally like with Beyonce and Sean Paul, Baby Boy, and you think of like Elephant Man with Pond the River, and you think of Beanie Man, and you think of Bounty Killer, and you think of all these guys. They were really doing their thing. But like I said, 20 years down the line, you can't at least globally name five, dancehall or Caribbean artists that are shaking the game, you may think of Skilly Bang and you may think of Popcorn today, but it's hard to start thinking of the other names. It shouldn't be that hard, right? And
Right.
so going back to the original question, for our sound, for Afrobeats or for amapiano or just music from the continent as a whole, um, we have obviously Burna, Wiz, David, Rema, but and Rema's like kind of like almost on his own as the next guy breaking through from generationally.
Hundred
But
percent.
then there's still the need to curate, cultivate, incubate a lot more talent, so
For sure.
there's like another set of people coming, like another, if we had three or four global superstars, if you include like Mr. Easy, if you include Tiwa Savage, if you include Yemi Alade and all these people, we want to have like three times that number coming, and we have the numbers, so
But
there's
you
no
know what
reason
is
why
so
we can't do
funny?
that.
Do you know that's so funny to me? Like we've already seen almost like 3 or 4 generations of Afrobeats like come through, like from like
Hmm.
D'banj, then
Hmm.
from D'banj's era, Nato C to Tiwa
Hmm.
Savage, you
Hmm.
know, Wizkid, Burna. Oh, Burna's even I wouldn't even say Burna. Well, I wouldn't say that his time was then. I think his
Hmm.
time is now. And
Now,
then
yeah.
yeah, and then with the now with like the Thames and what's her name,
Hmm.
Ira Star.
Hmm.
And so I just think that there's this hunger and there's this, there's no stopping consumers from doing what they want to do. And the African
Right.
population is massive and it's growing exponentially. So like there's
Right.
no way to sort of dictate what Africans are going to listen to. And I personally haven't listened to hip hop since 2015. I just listen to Afrobeats and a
Right.
little bit of pop.
Right.
But Afrobeats, maybe a little bit of R&B, but not modern R&B, old R&B. So like for me, like I just see how like I see what you're saying that it's a new hip hop,
Right.
but I don't think there's any sort of like controlling it or stopping it. Do you see what I mean? Because I don't know. There's this extra layer of hunger that this is a new revenue
Yeah.
stream
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
they have,
Absolutely.
and we're gonna give our
Absolutely.
all, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I think first of all, just I mean Nigeria alone, it's what 220 million, people, and like 70% under the age of 35 or something, or so huge young population, right? So naturally music is going to play a huge role in that. Sport is going to play a huge role in that. Media and entertainment as a whole will play a huge role of influence in these young minds because everyone has a phone, everyone wants to be on TikTok and do this and do that. So obviously we're going to keep churning out talent, right? But there's one thing with churning out talent. There's another thing with actually curating and guiding them properly. So I think that's where it comes in. I mean, if I take South Africa, for example, amapiano is doing its thing right now, but um, there's not enough, in my opinion, global facing artists in the Mapiano space. So people obviously will know Uncle Waffles and they'll know Major League DJs and Scorpion Kings, which comprises of Kabza the Small and Maporisa. But those are like the biggest names, and those are the ones who actually are going out and touring and taking the sound to the globe. A lot of them are still within South Africa, and they're not exposing it as much, and that's why you have like Nigerian artists making amapiano music, and it's almost like if you guys won't expose it, we will, So
Right, and they're getting upset
so
about that. But
and they're
funny
getting
enough,
upset about it,
for what you
exactly.
said, I don't know any one of the people that you've mentioned. Sorry, I don't. So what do you think it's about? Is it that they haven't branded or packaged themselves in a way that is appealing? And it sounds like a lot of people you mentioned are DJs. They're not actual
Well,
musicians.
I
Like,
mean, at the
let me
end,
understand.
do you think DJ Khaled is an artist or a DJ?
Okay, fair enough. But he branded himself. He branded like and DJ.
But
Sorry, what's his name? David Guetta. They branded themselves as artists, right?
but that's the
Just
same thing my piano artists will do, So
okay.
yeah, it's I mean they're artists, who can sing and have amazing vocals who can also spin, So someone like I mentioned Scorpion Kings, they release records and they release albums all the time and they collaborate a lot, which is actually what I really love about the fact that they may not be as vocal, even though Maparisa jumps on records actually, so he's pretty vocal. But a lot of them give avenues for newcomers and they give avenue for collaboration. So it allows us to actually know who else is in the scene and doing their thing, or I should say on the scene. But yeah, I just feel like they can do a lot more to push globally and push this sound out so that more people can, be a part of it and learn to love it.
So what does it take to push yourself globally? What is the Burna Boy, Davido, Wizkid blueprint of going global?
I mean, there are many ways to skin, a furry animal. So,
Mm.
um, it's not one way fits all. Everybody really comes as, into their own as their own. So there's some artists like maybe Wizkid, for example, who came up, through, though he came up through EME and all of that, but he always had the love of the streets, right? Because, he's from Surulere and all of that versus, a David who had to go through grinding it out, because people label him a more privileged person. And so he had to prove that he could stand in the ring with other artists. And then you have a Burna who, came from the mud, through PH and all of that. And then, not to say he's like a street artist or anything, but he also had to find his way in a different way, right? So everybody is so different. I mean, you look at Naira Marley or you look at, Iris Star, they all have different stories. So there's really no one way to it. But as long as I think at the core, you have a good team and you have a team of people who are willing to listen and um, absorb what there is to take that is positive from the lessons you will learn.
But I will say
You
that you
know,
must have a formula, right? Because it can't be coincidence, that
it's not coincidence.
worked with Burna Boy, you worked with World, and look at them, who they are today, Cavemen. So what is your sort of like blueprint? Maybe I don't know if it's a paint by numbers system or strategy that you use to make an
Um,
artist pop, and why South African artists or these amapiano artists are not, tapping into that sort of blueprint.
I mean, like, I not to like I by any means I don't I don't have all the answers, right? As they say, what's the sway joke, but I've always just gone on, I think I said it earlier, first on instinct of belief in the artist and the talent. And then given the network I've built, and the resources I have access to from experience, I can plug people into different things and places to allow their sound build and move. I mean, you mentioned the Cavemen, for example. The Cavemen, are a fantastic, high life band. And for me, being a lover of music and especially being from the east, high life was a part of what we grew up on, right? In terms of our parents who played and danced to it, or you hear it at weddings and such. So meeting artists, when they were very young, in the Cavemen, and they kind of didn't have sort of any guidance or direction, I was happy to look at what they're doing, and I heard their sound because they actually came in working with us as World's band, right? And so I remember it was one day during
Interesting.
rehearsal. Yeah, yeah, they were World's band for a bit, when World is doing his Nigerian shows, and then one day during rehearsals, Kingsley, he was like, "Hey, can I play you something?" I was like, "Of course." And then he played me a song, and I was just like, "Whoa, like this is amazing." And I guess he might have played the songs or that song for other people, but right time, right place. I like High Life. I listened to it personally, so it appealed to me. And so I was like, okay, let's see how to make this work, right? And there's no other active High Life bands, so you guys can even come at this from a legendary standpoint of no one is doing this, so you're basically on an island. So if we expose you to the world, the world will love you because I've always had, dreams of taking a band and having them play at Montreux Jazz Festival. So right there and then I was like, this is it. These are the guys who are gonna go, and we're gonna go to Montreux Jazz Festival and go play this music because you think of Fela and you think of King Sunny Ade and these guys who played at legendary festivals back in the 70s and 60s and such and such. And for this long 30, almost 40-year gap, no one is really taking on that sound. So I was like, why not do this? And it's out of the box, which I like. And it was different. And very early when we started, a lot of people didn't get it. A lot of people didn't get the Caveman. A lot of people were like, what is this Igbo music, or what is this, church music, or what is this, and it was one of those where for me it was like, don't worry, you guys would get it. You get it, you get it. Saheed and I would look at each other and like, they'll get it. People will get it. And we just kept pushing. And once again, through our, networks and resources and people we know. Also, shout out to Mike Ugu of Free Me because he also believed in them and he was an early player in their career, and allowed us put out their first album, with a bit of a budget. So that helped tremendously as well. So shout out to him. But yeah, it was just a thing of building and building and building and letting people get it. And I think a lot of artists tend to think there's like a it's like a 1 year journey, or 18 months. Sometimes it takes up to 4 years, but you have to just believe in what you're doing and make sure you're doing the right thing to then get to your goal. So the caveman is definitely, or has definitely been a beautiful journey, starting from literally nothing, and watching them today sell out Europe and sell out, shows everywhere and do their thing. I mean, obviously they're doing big features and stuff now. It's beautiful. It's been beautiful to help be a part of, help orchestrate, and they're gonna have a very long career for themselves, basically. I think
Fantastic.
with what we've helped them do. Yeah.
So talk to me now today, because like we've talked about your growth story, and now you're doing big deals. You're making millions of dollars doing big deals. Tell
Amapiano.
me, tell me some of the deals that you're doing that are already out there, that not anything secretive, obviously, but tell me how you're able to structure some of these deals. You're bringing Brick Ross to Nigeria. You're partnering with Universal, all these big labels. You're signing Davido in a licensing deal. All these people. Talk to me about that.
Um, I mean, it goes back to doing it right, and your intention for the culture. Um, you can meet, 100 people in a room, but I guess it takes that extra bit of, I don't know-how, or uh, you know, something in your head to know that this is the right person to go with, right? So, for us, it's been. I think one thing I learned as well, in doing diligent work, people are always watching. And so whether you know it or not, someone is watching, I know when the time is right, things will happen. So for us, it had just been about doing good work. And then, we started getting into the right rooms and meeting the right people off of the good work we had been doing, So, say, for example, very early on, into our publishing journey, um, like I said, we were the only publishers in Nigeria at the time. I don't think anyone even, had heard of a publisher from Nigeria. So obviously there are companies around the world that are looking to either participate or even help fix the publishing game in Nigeria, but they don't know who to talk to. So when they see somebody, who is doing that, they're going to gravitate toward you. So, and that, that took me going to, like, ASCAP events and BMI events and things like these, places where I'm going to go find the people who are in this world with me and then just talk to them. And very early on, I was the only one talking about Nigeria, and everyone was like, Nigeria, like, like what is this? What is happening there? We didn't know there was like a publishing situation to even be had, or discussions to be had around Nigeria. But I was like, there is, I'm the one, I'm here. And so, we did a very early JV with a company called Downtown, and they helped us collect in regions where we couldn't, collect, maybe in places like, parts of Asia, or, parts of Europe we
Mm.
couldn't get to. Do you know what I mean? They were helping us do that. And so that obviously became a very good relationship and partnership that we built on. And then once you start, the ball kind of keeps rolling, right? And then from that relationship, networking, it'll lead to someone introducing you to somebody else and such and such. And so it just kind of went like that, even, and not just for publishing, across the board, like even with, distributors and labels and such, it becomes, okay, there are these guys who are from Nigeria and they're based in LA, but they're looking after this and that and that and this, and it's lucrative. There's money in their
Mhm.
accounts. They're doing things for these artists that gets them paid. Anybody's going to listen to that. Anybody's going to want to look at it again and be like, "Oh, I didn't know we could do this." And so, um, that's what it's really been. That's what it's kind of been, and it's been a gradual process. Nothing overnight. Nothing, that just we wouldn't have to have worked hard for, right? So
Right.
from the downtown relationship, once again, I remember there was this there was this event that I used to go to. It was like a monthly event where a group of music industry people in LA would go around tasting food, and then we'd use that as networking as well, right? So we go to like a random burger restaurant in, I don't know, Silver Lake or something. And then you'd go, they'd pass like burgers around and we try it, everybody would judge it, and then we decide where we want to go next. But also in that, setting, we talk about music stuff, we talk about industry stuff. And so I remember going to that event a few times, meeting different people. And then one day, I met this lady who, once again, heard me talking about Nigeria, and she was like, "Hey, Nigeria, da da da. Da. I think you should meet this person." And then, long story short, I met someone who's now a good friend of mine. Her name is Grace. And Grace worked at Concord, the music company called Concord. And Concord is one of the biggest companies in the world. You can, look them up for anyone who doesn't know who they are. Concord Music Group. And Grace and I had lunch one day, sat and, I told her the whole thing, what we were doing. And Concord were interested. They wanted to work with us. They needed, or I shouldn't say needed, but they wanted to be part of what was going on in Africa. And, the conversation built and built and built. And then eventually we got into a partnership. And then that was how things started there. And then obviously through Grace, met the different, execs and VPs and heads of the company. And then it's now a beautiful, fruitful relationship. But that's where it started. And it's just things as simple as getting up and going to speak your truth, going to network and going to meet people. That turned into, a whatever 7-figure relationship or whatever you want to call it for us and for the artists that we've brought on board, right? So,
I
and the
love that.
songwriters and producers, yeah.
And I think I just want to mention that you actually taught me a very key networking skill, which was especially when I was younger and hungry and trying to get deals or whatever, and you were just like, just be cool, like just be friends, like don't come with like this sort of like energy of hustle and trying to get a
Right.
contract or one deal. Think about it long term and just like a long term friendship. And that was really a key gem that helped me out, and I can see obviously it's helped you build all of these relationships.
Right. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Thank you for referring to that. I think it's something I still carry with me till this day. There are people who I'll meet them in 20, or I would have met them in 20, I don't know, 18, and we won't get to actually do work till maybe 2022 because we just spent the whole time actually being friends. Because once again, everything for me starts with a relationship. And some people, it's different. You meet on the spot and you're discussing business, and kudos to y'all, but for me, there has to be a relationship. And I'm not trying to do business with the whole world. We're not trying to sign every artist in the world because it's not possible. But the people you do end up working with, the people you do end up doing deals for or with, let there be a relationship there because that makes everything easier. So there are times when even today, I may be out in an event or a club or somewhere, and someone will come to me and start talking to me about a business deal. And I'm just like, dude, I can't even hear you. Like, it's like, like we're in a
Look,
club.
yeah, everybody heard about Kanye signing Big Sean off of one rap, and everybody wants to take their one shot and get it.
I mean, just in my opinion, I don't think I would rather see someone, meet someone and say, "Hey, what's up?" and we engage, and then we schedule something for later, and then we can actually talk, in a private room or in the office or in whatever, but there's people, who will literally come to you in a club or at a festival and they're trying to get a deal done right there and then. I'm like, how do you expect this to happen? First of all. Secondly, how do you expect us to want to build upon this relationship if you clearly are gunning for, the jugular right off the bounce, So I personally don't enjoy those, and those don't
Yeah,
last long for me. Yeah.
for sure. And I think it's a testament about the industry itself, the nature of its industry, because like in some spaces you need to make a sale instantly, like if you're selling
Right.
a product, right? So it makes sense to do that. But here you're not selling a product, you're building a brand, and
Right.
you're building you're building a brand, so that takes more time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just
Absolutely.
wanted, there are a few things you said, and I just want to really touch on them. The first one is Fela, and we talked about how, Afrobeats, are we here to stay? And
Hmm.
I just want to talk about the difference between this Afrobeats movement
Mm.
and the Afrobeat movement
Mm-hmm.
before with Fela, and
Mm-hmm.
how at the same in a way we're seeing the same thing happen again, right? Because Fela was international, he was worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we lose? Why did we lose it? Is it because of the Nigerian government? Is it because of military era? Why do you think we lost
Um,
it?
it's a combination of things that I think all led into or bled even into one another, i.e., I think the military era definitely played a role because a lot something a lot of people don't know, EMI and Universals and this all these labels, they were in Nigeria back in the 70s and back in the day. They were all there. They had offices, they had execs and everything,
Same as Ford and
in
all these car
Lagos.
companies, all these car companies, they were all
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
They were all there, and then when Nigeria's government started to, I guess, misbehave, they moved away, because it just wasn't worth them either risking their lives, um or just the market would just wasn't conducive for them to operate. And so they were there and they left, and that definitely contributed to the moment of silence, or the blackout period for West African music. And so
And can we like say what era that was? What was the blackout period? What
I
dates
want
would
to
you
say
say?
I want to say something maybe between, like, I want to say definitely the 80s for sure, and a large chunk of the 90s up until, I mean, what, so like late 70s, a lot of the 80s, and then I'll say early 90s up until the likes of Obiasikas and Olisa Adibas. They were, young, and they'd either moved back from the UK. Kind of, it's the same story for all of us, where you have passion for home, you have passion for where you come from, and you want to see more done for this thing that you love, right? Because um, the Obies and the Olisas, I'm sure they were in love with, the Fellas and all of that from back in the day. And they were probably asking the same question, where's our music? And so they moved back to start getting things going, right? And so
Mm,
it's the same story. And then, obviously at the time it was, CDs, vinyls. CDs weren't even out, at that time, but it was like vinyls and tapes
mm.
and stuff. But they came back to figure it out with like Junior and Pretty and people like that, and then graduated, Storm Records, and then as time moved
I
on,
remember Storm. I
into,
remember Storm
you
Records.
know what I mean, into NATO C, as you mentioned, Two Face and Plantation Boys and all, just that whole story. But
I think at one
and
point you had said that it was NATO C that made you say, "Wait a minute, I want to be a part of this thing." That's
no, it was
was it?
Links.
Oh, it's
It was
links. Okay,
links.
okay.
It was links. It was not to say, like, I'm sure he'll probably find out here, but it's not like I ever told him. But just because he was someone who I knew from childhood, and I saw him doing it, that inspired me to be like,
But you
okay,
said something about
I
NATO
can do
C as well.
this.
In another interview I interviewed you, you said something about NATO C that you saw something. I don't know. You
I
saw
think,
something
well,
there.
with NATO, because NATO is somebody who I know personally as well, and I think with NATO, it'll probably be like he is someone who I can attribute to guiding or modernizing Afrobeats, because he came
Boom.
with,
You got it. You got it.
yeah, he came with like more of the
Hip hop.
rapper American
Yeah.
mindset, hip hop
Yeah.
mindset, but then that guided us into also, dressing a certain way, trying to be cool a certain way, and he was the man, at that
Yeah.
point, right?
Yeah.
And he's still the man in my opinion, but at that point when he was at his top, at his height, at his pinnacle, he was definitely the guide that led us, alongside Banky and people like that. They led
Mm.
us into what is cool today. Yeah.
Okay. And then another time we had spoken about publishing and how sort of these
Hmm.
European companies bought the rights to like Felas and Sunny Adays and
Hmm.
all that stuff. Let's talk about that. How like people are our artists are giving, almost selling their soul, selling their legacy to these sort of European companies in a sort of like colonial
Mm.
sensibility.
Mm. Um, I mean, at the end of the day, everyone and every team, comprises of adults who can make decisions, right? So, you know, I'm not in a position, I don't think anyone is in a position to speak for someone's decisions, but obviously some decisions are bad. And some decisions work out for people. Um, I think the way I look at it, and what we as a company are trying to do, is let people know that, it doesn't take signing to a big foreign label or signing to a big foreign company to prove that you've made it, right? There's still players locally, or at least players who can relate to them, that they can either, affiliate with, sign with, be managed by, or have guide them into the broader world, that have their best interests at heart. Because I think, unfortunately, a lot of artists, in today's world, and it happens to me even till this day, I may want to sign someone for a pub deal, and given that, Concord, for example, they're a company, that a global company, New York, LA, Berlin, and such, they may talk to me about the same deal, and they may not be interested. But if I told someone else from Concord to talk to them, they'll be interested. And I've literally seen people with egg on their face, where they come and realize I'm the same person that was orchestrating a deal for them, but because someone from, the abroad brought it to them, they were happy to do it versus dealing with a Nigerian person. And it's unfortunate,
But that's
because
funny because you're in America. So is that, but
yeah,
because you're
but I mean,
Nigerian?
my name is still on the chest. I have a green passport. I have a blue passport, but still, you know what I mean? I'm still Nigerian, right? And so they'd rather deal with the foreigner than deal with the local person, because I'm,
Mm.
as much as, I live in LA, I'm in Lagos or Abuja or wherever I need to be at least every 3 months, right? So I'm very much on ground, here as well as I am there.
I
And that's
mean,
unfortunate.
well, like that's just the nature of white supremacy. And look, the Chinese are taking it. They're taking it from them. So the bricks, we're taking
bricks,
it. They're
yeah,
taking it.
let's,
They're taking it from them. But
yeah.
that's another conversation
That's
entirely.
another, exactly. Let's
But
leave the bricks out of this. Yeah.
I wanted to talk about. Lastly, we see a lot of artists in America who don't see the value in having a record deal with
Hmm.
very exploitative terms. We
Hmm.
look at Ross, who talks about, he talks about how a record label is an expensive bank. You could just go get a bank loan. Obviously, if you put yourself in the right situation to get good credit,
Hmm.
hire the team to do what you need to do, and build your music career that way. Can you tell me about? Yes, of course, there is a. I don't know. There's a workflow to being in a traditional label system, right? A
Hmm.
branding workflow. They put you on Jimmy Kimmel and all these late night shows. They package you like a superstar. They fund your publicity, and you appear as a bigger star because ultimately, Ross is not seen as a superstar. What's his name? Chance the Rapper, as much as he was independent, so he never really got that sort of superstar status in a way that
I
he
don't
could. Like
agree.
he got hyped, but he wasn't. He got hyped, but he was never like in line with. I would say like I don't know. I would say yeah. Okay, I'd say maybe he was not in line with like a Justin Bieber, right? Or a big act. He was big at his
Mm.
time, but he wasn't big, or he wasn't seen legitimately as that big simply because he didn't have a record label, right?
I don't agree.
So okay, that's interesting. I want to hear your take. So what do you okay, before we even get into this question,
Hmm.
give me your take on sort of like the difference between an independent artist today and what they're
Hmm.
able to do with their brand versus a signed artist, and why should anybody seek signing, get a record deal?
I mean, obviously the music landscape has changed, tremendously, where you go back, I don't know, 10 years even, right? And people were more excited about being signed and such than being independent, versus today, where a lot of artists scream independence and, and champion that. But ultimately, a person like Russ can say that because Russ has empowered himself with a good team. Because like, often, artists, I talk to them, or or get into conversations, and they talk about, oh, I need, come and manage me, or I need a manager that has contacts and this and that. And I always say to them, I often say to them, I should say, um sometimes you don't even necessarily need to jump to a manager. You may just get yourself a great assistant, or a great, accountant, or a great, just people around you who can do the job. And so Once you do that, maybe the assistant today could be the manager tomorrow because they've built with you and grown with you. But I say all that to say, um, someone like Russ can say that because he's built a great team around himself, right? Chance can say that as well in terms of, or can be great as an independent artist because they've built good teams around themselves, versus another artist who is just out the mud and talented, and an A&R, the label spots them and gives them a deal that changes their life. Now, at the time of signing that deal, once again, you have the ability and you're told in every contract, please make sure you give this to a lawyer, right? To look over it for you and negotiate it for you, blah, blah, blah. And some artists will say, I don't care about that. I'm signing right now. That's a bad decision.
Well, these are people that
You
had know
know,
nothing about business, right?
it
I think
doesn't,
I
no,
think I
but it
think what
doesn't,
it takes in today's era is like you have to have
mhm.
business acumen if you go into like entertainment. You know,
I think you have to have common sense. Let's start with that.
common sense
Because
is not
if
common. Common sense is not common, right? If
I
you're
mean,
coming
but
from
I'm
the
just
hood
saying,
where people are shooting, gang banging, what the hell is a lawyer? Like you see a stack,
no,
you see a
there's,
stack of $150,000. We'll give this to you
I
now.
disagree.
We'll take your whole
I
masters
disagree.
and everything.
I
Okay, I want to hear
disagree.
your take.
They're amazing entrepreneurs and brilliant minds that still come from those same hoods, and
Well,
they
okay,
found their way out of it.
okay, but
You
here's
know,
the thing: like you're talking about the difference in people. Some people like Russ, he built that because he's a good entrepreneur. Chance the Rapper built that because he's a
and
good entrepreneur, right?
kudos to
There,
them.
but I'm saying like there most people don't have that entrepreneurial bug, and I say this all the time that in today's era, as a
Hmm.
musician, as an artist, anyone in the entertainment industry, you have to have business acumen, or you're going to be taken for a ride,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely, absolutely.
But
Or you have you.
I'm just giving you the case of someone that chooses to be ignorant. You know, especially music is a young game. Younger people tend to be
Hmm.
more ignorant about money and this stuff. So it's a little bit
Hmm.
understandable, right? That they will say, "Oh wow, you're gonna give me $150,000 and you're gonna take my masters? What's that? Okay, give me 100." You know,
Ultimately, so for me, I think let's just to make it clear. I'm happy at the advent of independence for artists today. Um, but I'm also happy with what record labels do for artists. And it's actually exciting to see record labels adapt to the independent nature of artists today. Meaning, big record companies, Universal, Sony, Warner, whoever, they have subsidiaries, and the Universal has like Virgin, or they have Ingrooves. Uh, Warner has what's it called, ADA. Warner have a company called ADA. Sony have the Orchard, and these are companies that do deals with either less established and even big artists too, but they're maybe deals that are more flexible and more adaptable and more favorable to these independent artists, so that if they don't want to sign away their masters or and such, they can do a deal that's comfortable for them to allow them still be in the system. Because what you know and I was going back to, I'd wanted to make the point earlier that with record labels and with what's happened from back in the day, um things like making CDs and putting all the marketing stuff up and getting radio favorability, it's expensive, right? So as independents, you don't expect everyone to have $100,000 sitting in their bank for a campaign, and that's why the record label would provide that for an artist.
but
And
I'm just
then,
saying that it's expensive money, right? It's
well,
very
but the
expensive
point,
money.
but the point is, at the end of the day, even if you go in any business you're in, right? You go take a loan, right, from a bank. You go take a loan from somebody. There's interest, right? There's a
It's interest,
term.
but not ownership.
No, no,
You
no,
see what I'm
no.
saying?
Hold on. But it's about you negotiate. This is why I brought it back to build your team, right? Because if you can
Right.
negotiate either licensing, you can negotiate, full ownership on masters from the label. You can negotiate whatever you want. As long as ultimately it starts with them being interested in your talent, and
Fair
that's your
enough.
leverage, right? And if you have that leverage, you can figure out a deal. You can figure out
Right.
something that works for you and works for them. I don't believe there's any label or any company out there that'll be interested in, someone who is a brilliant artists, and then all of a sudden, because they don't want to give away their masters, they're going to pull the deal. No, I don't think that's true. I think they're going to work with them to figure out the best deal. Now, if the artist unfortunately makes it easy for the label to sign them without doing too much haggle, the artist, why would they'll
That's on
take
you.
it? That's on
That's
you,
on you.
and that's what
Which
I'm
is,
saying. Yeah,
it is. I'm just saying it's like I hear you, and it's easy to say it like that. But we have to just also recognize that most of these artists are very young, and they don't
yeah, but they
know.
have
They don't even
guardians,
know.
they
Please,
have
if you're an
parents, they
artist,
have
go and
yeah.
read. Even parents, like, do they really know? Some
I
parents will
mean,
say,
I get
"Ha,
it.
$150,000, Jesus."
But that's a parent making a decision to not look at a
Right.
contract, and so once
But
again,
that's
it's
I
down to
just
the
think it's
individual.
okay. Let me just break it. Let me just break it. I think it's or break it down. Like, I think it's a lack of financial literacy.
Yes.
And so I think if anybody's an artist right now, and you want to be an artist, you want to get signed, the first thing I'll tell you, go read Rich Dad Poor Dad, go read all of his books before you even start, so that you're not taken for a ride.
Right.
So that's one thing, right? The second thing I'll say is, what are these Afrobeats deals looking like when they're doing these deals with international companies?
Hmm.
What are they looking like? I know Burna Boy is making serious. He claimed that he made $100 million in 2022, but I know some
Um,
other people.
he made a lot of money for sure.
Okay, so I want to hear about some of these deals. And I know some people are being taken for a ride. Like, I don't want to call names, but some
Right.
of these younger guys, I don't imagine that they are getting more than 20K a month. Or so you tell me,
Even if
what
they're
are these
getting up
deals
to that.
looking at?
But look, at the end of the day, right?
Damn.
You see, so in the spirit or in the breath of independence, right? And that's why I mentioned the subsidiary companies of these major labels, and though there are other, independent distribution companies and such, it's like if you offer somebody 100,000 and offer them 10,000, 9 times out of 10 they're gonna go for the 100,000, right? But you have to also take the terms that come with it, right? So, versus the 10,000, maybe you keep 100% of your master rights and such, but the 10,000 doesn't do anything for your campaign. Versus you give away 40% of your master rights, or you license your master rights for a 5-year period or whatever, and you take the 100,000, but then that 100,000 that you've taken, you can turn that into 100 million if you do it right.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So it's really, so to say like artists are being taken for a ride, I disagree, because once again, it's also based on, for some companies, it's based on the stats. Like, some companies won't look at signing an artist if they don't have 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify, versus other companies that will look at an artist and say, I like their sound, so I want to back them. Either way, it's a risk, right? But then someone is, like, I guess, banking against the 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify to minimize their risk, versus, the person who has nothing, but he can be the biggest artist for tomorrow. And then maybe in those cases, the 1 million monthly listener artist on Spotify may get 300,000, and then the guy with nothing may get 50,000. It's still a risk for whoever's investing,
For
i.e.,
sure.
people like us and such and such. It's still a risk, but it's just based on how bad you want the artist, how much you believe in the artist, how much you want to see them do well. And then obviously, as a business, you have to make the best business decisions, right, for the company
Right.
you represent.
Right. Okay. So what are these deals looking like with the Afrobeats
I
space?
mean,
Are they getting money, or are they
yeah.
getting taken for a
No,
ride?
no, no, no. I like.
Are they selling their masters? Are they giving up their masters?
I,
And how much are they giving
I
them up
mean,
for?
so the reason, like, going back to it, that's why I brought up these independent companies, because a lot of artists, majority of artists, given that everyone is in independent mode, a lot of artists are doing deals that are more either like licensing, distribution deals that allow them keep all their rights. And
Mm-hmm.
then obviously, as I mentioned before, if you're giving less to the investor will give you less. So, you know, maybe they may do a deal for 50,000 for one EP or one album or something, right? And 50,000 is your advance, your promotion, your budget, and such and such. And if you use that smartly, you will be, fine, and you'll be rewarded. Versus if you use that stupidly, you go buy, a nice car or something with all the money, and then you have no money to shoot your music videos and stuff, that's on you as well. It's decision making as an adult, right? So, and versus
But this is
going
where I have
to
such a big problem
wait,
with
no,
that
hold
because
on,
it's not it's
but
not
hold
it's not a personal.
no, but hold on,
That's a
hold on,
business
no, but hold on,
investment. That's not a you thing. I think the
yeah,
music industry has done a very terrible job of schooling these artists and letting them understand that this
that's
is a
not the music
business investment.
industry's that's
This
not the
is
music
not.
industry's job though to go. I mean, I didn't rely on the music industry to school me. I went to go school
I
myself,
totally get that. I get that.
you know.
Look, I understand. Look, it's a dog eat dog world,
Hmm.
but anyone that's listening to this has some sort of interest in business. So this is why I'm not positioning this conversation for the dummy on the street, right? This is a conversation for people that would like have sort of some level of business acumen and
Absolutely.
just like, so we're in the realm of people that understand this, but it's still like we have to admit that it's still exploitative. Like, that this 10-year-old does not, or this 15-year-old does not know a damn thing
A 15 year
about
old
any
can't
sort
do
of
it. A
business.
15-year-old can't do a deal
Yeah, but
without
his
their
mom
parents'
is
consent.
there. Okay, the
Yeah.
mom is there. The mom is like, okay, the mom is there. What does the mom necessarily know? Most people don't know anything about
They're gonna
business.
go get a lawyer in the entertainment industry who does know about business. That's what I'm saying. It goes back
But
to
that lawyer will still
decision
take you for
making.
a ride.
Why
But
would the
okay,
lawyer
it's
take
fair.
you for a
But
ride? If the lawyer has
because
a commission to make from a deal and then they do the deal on your behalf and then they earn the commission, everybody keeps it moving. Why
I
would the
guess
lawyer take you for a
there's
ride?
a school of there's a school of thought that don't expect anybody to make your money for you, and
Yes.
that's just it, because they
Yeah,
will
but
make their money first,
I
as
think
and 10 times over. They'll run laps around you if they can, as much as they're able to,
I mean
right?
I hear you, but I also want to say that I think there's and this is, I guess take it whether it's me defending or not defending, but I think there's a stigma against the music industry because of stories from the past. And just like I mentioned to you, the Alaba situation, right? Of course, there's exploitative elements and people, but in today's market, especially with more people leaning toward independence, it's harder to get scammed. It's harder for people to take you for a ride because these deals are really either scrutinized and really looked through and really done based on the level of the artist and where they're at, or if someone is going from zero to signing with, the big labels and such, this the deal is still going to be such that all the elements will be in play to protect the artist, i.e., even for me, if I'm going to do a deal with somebody, I'm going to enforce that there's a lawyer on the other party's behalf. Do you know what I mean? To make sure that this is a fair negotiation. And if they can't afford the lawyer, we can fund that for them and then we can take the money back later or something. Do you know what I mean? Or something like that. But you have to make sure that, because it's literally there in the contract, we make sure that this deal has been looked over by both sets of lawyers and such and such.
Okay,
So I'm
so
committing a crime if I don't do that.
this is not an attack on you.
No, no, no.
I
Come on.
just
Of
want to
course. Of
know. I
course.
want to know, right? The deal that Thames is signing with these
Hmm.
US, I don't know, is she signed to Universal? I don't know. The deal that Burna Boy is signing,
Hmm.
Davido, Asake, all these people,
Hmm.
are they selling their masters?
Honestly, I can't say because I don't know but I can give you two answers here. One is I can't say because I'm not, privy to some of these deals. Um, for the ones that I am privy to, I no, they're not selling their masters. In this day and age, most deals are licensing deals. So they're licensing, the use of their masters for a period of time, to which it'll
Okay, and
revert
so
back to
just a
them.
question: those deals that you're licensing the use of your masters,
Hmm.
is it like a percentage wise? Is it like you'll take 50%, this person will take the other
Yeah,
50, or is it
I
like we're
mean,
going to take 100% of the
oh no,
licensing
come
for
on.
the
It
next
can't be
5
100.
years?
It can never be 100%. Come on. But it's
Okay.
obviously, and it's down to negotiation. It's down to what your team, your lawyer, whoever's representing you can negotiate with the label versus say, because there's situations where, like I said, just using simple numbers, if a label offers you 100,000 and they want to license your music for 5 years and they want to earn, I don't know, 75%, right? You can come back and say, okay, no, I want to give it to you for 3 years and I want you to earn 50%. And I'm going to take 60,000. Do you know what I mean? It's movable.
Right.
It's not a one size fits all. It's not a a death
So what
sentence
would you say?
contract or
What would
whatever
you
you want to
say
call
to
it.
every artist before going into these deals, these negotiations? I mean, would you say to them, get your shit hot, get your stuff popping, and then approach these labels? What would you say?
Look, at the end of the day, the job of the label, and specifically the A&R or scout at a label, is to go and see what's next or who's next. Now, I personally, for example, do that on my own because I just have that in me of my passion is talent development and talent discovery. And that's why I guess I'm known for finding new talent and taking them to whatever the next level, blah, blah, blah. Um, that's their job, right? To go out and find talent, right? So if they're doing their job right, they will find talent. A lot of the time, you may find talent that is at ground zero and they have nothing and they've done nothing. Or you may find someone who's actually put the work in themselves and they've been releasing songs and they have like 50,000 monthly listeners on Spotify, which actually makes the A&R's job easy because at that point he has something to say, oh, this person has put out an EP on their own, and they're getting some numbers or there's a listener base. And then you can go a step further and go into the street and see, what people are saying about these artists. You see what local shows they're performing at. You can see what residency this artist has been able to secure for themselves at a bar. And then they're playing every Friday and you can see who shows up to see them every Friday at this bar. And that tells you, what the artist is doing, gives you a read on their temperature of how hot the artist is. You know what I mean? And that can
Yeah.
aid you to signing them. So there's so many different ways to it. So just going back to your question, as a new artist or up and coming artist, just I think the most important thing is just be real to yourself and keep your talent, as your skills as sharp as you can be, and then do your thing to be out there where you need to be seen. So if Club A is where all the A&Rs go to, every Friday, make sure you're in Club A so that when they're looking, they see you. You know what I mean? And then a conversation can be had, or get yourself a great assistant or a great team because some people get scared. Oh, and unfortunately I hear that there are managers who actually charge artists to manage them. I've heard there are music channels, like platforms, for example, who charge people to be on the platform. What's the point? I thought it was exposure. You're meant to be helping new artists get exposed, yet you're charging them to be on your platform. So it's like, as long as you're not getting exploited in that sense, where it's like you're getting a team of people who actually care about you and who care about your career to help guide you, then you will eventually get it all right and you'll meet the right people, you'll be in the right place in the right time. And then, or you could be like a Chance the Rapper or a Russ, who you don't even look the major way. You just want to grind it up, as entrepreneur style from the ground up, and do your thing and get there eventually, because everything that a label can do for you, you can definitely do it yourself. But a label, has the experience and has the resources and has the network to do it maybe easier or quicker
And
or better
faster.
for you,
Yeah.
or what I mean. So yeah, so it's all up to each individual team, each individual artist on how they want to approach the game. You know what I mean?
I totally get that. Okay, so and then finally, what would you say to anyone that wants to be a music executive like yourself, wants to get into the game? What advice would you give them?
I would say study, in terms of study the game. Know, like, because it's like everything happens, in its moment. Once again, as we touched on, luck is preparation meets, hard work and such and such. If you know enough about, say, just for ease of conversation, say the Afrobeats market, the top 10 companies, the top 10 producers, the statistics of the artists and such and such. If you yourself are subscribing to websites and software platforms that show you statistics, and you have that at the back of your brain, and you walk into an industry event and you happen to bump into the head of Universal or the head of Sony or whoever, and you get into a conversation and you're ready to spark a discussion that makes that person think, then yeah, they will definitely probably call you the next day and be like, I like your brain. How do do you want to come work with us? Or what do you think about being in this and that? And it's the same with me, like where, we have a big team, but we still add people to our team who are worthy or who make sense because they have curiosity, they have knowledge, and they're teaching me things because, I'm still learning. I'm still learning every day. You know what I mean? I'm still like trying to gain knowledge and keep up with, everything that's coming up because at some point I'm going to be an old man and I'm going to need to still know what's going on in the industry that I'm participating in. So I always have to learn. So it's really about that, in my opinion.
Yeah, so this is actually my final question. So what's next for you? You said, you started out with publishing, you moved into management, now you're doing live shows. Tell us about, sort of that live show landscape and, you're very quiet. You don't do a lot of publicity, but with live shows, that's going to be doing events, that's going to put, people's attention on you. Talk to me about, what's next.
I mean, just talking about live shows, it puts people's attention on the event. It puts people's attention
And the
on
event,
the artist.
the person that's holding, and the brand that's holding the event.
Yeah, the brand, fine, but the brand is a company that consists of a lot of people. And so it's not just me because I'm not, a dictatorship. We're very much an open company with many members and such and such. I say all that to say, and obviously I'm ducking here because I'm a shy person, but I say all that to say, as a company, we're working on quite a few things, and we have obviously the publishing or rights management side, because even under rights management, there's publishing, there's neighboring rights, there are things like that, and then obviously there's like talent management, there's the live side, as you mentioned, there's the agency side slash consultancy side of things for other companies, right? You take, I don't know, Colors, for example, who are good friends, and we worked with them to, have them go to Nigeria and shoot, 10 amazing, artists. And, the gift that came out of it was obviously Oxlade's Closer, but that was something that we collaborated on, right? And that's also part of our business.
Yeah, you guys are doing a lot of stuff that is like, you guys are very much integrated in the scene. Like I saw you guys filmed that Davido album announcement.
Yeah, I mean, like I said,
You guys are doing a lot.
We definitely like, so as I mean, just I was prefacing, all of that to answer your question in terms of we have different verticals within the holding company. And the idea is to keep doing that with what we feel passionate about, right? So there are other things that are obviously coming up, even with live. We have a lot of ideas and a lot of festivals and shows and things to come that we're working on. And obviously the world will see it, when we're ready to announce or when we're ready to share, I'm not one to, I guess, give a lot away. Some people have called me the most silent guy in the music industry because I pop up or whatever, but I mean, I'm not here to put a sign on my head and say, hey, I'm doing this, I'm signing this, right? It's like, if you see it, you see it. And I think because I'm not I don't know, most outgoing, I'm social, but I'm not the most outgoing person. I don't need or feel the need to be everywhere. So, I guess people don't see a lot of me, and I'm not, like you said, I'm not a public facing person. So I don't necessarily, like to get, magazines, this and interview that and such and such. So when you see me, right? But we're definitely working on a lot of things. We have a lot of things, on the horizon. And the world will know soon.
Thank you so much, Koch.
Thank you.
I do have one final question.
Go for it.
Today is April. What's it? Today's
7th,
April 7th.
Yeah.
How much is in your account today?
I can't answer that question, but there's a few zeros in there. I can say.
Hey, we got something out of him. Thank you again, and that's a wrap.
All right, thank you.
All right. Well, that's all we have for today's episode of Business in Nigeria. We hope you found it informative and helpful. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out and use our website or social media channels. And don't forget to check out our exclusive course, business in Nigeria, where we go into more depth than we've even gone in this video, in this podcast. We go into more depth, teaching you the nitty gritty about business in Nigeria, how to get funding, how to start specific businesses. Go check that out at streamovg.com/business in Nigeria. A lot of value in that course. Go check it out. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and to our YouTube and all our socials, wherever you're watching this. And, for more valuable information, insights that you need on, starting a business in Nigeria. So until next time, stay motivated, stay informed, and keep pursuing your entrepreneurial dreams in Nigeria. See you next time. Peace.